born into a world of glittering palaces, velvet drapes, and golden halls. Princess Isabella's life seemed destined for greatness. From the moment she opened her eyes in her family's sprawling European estate, everyone whispered about her beauty, intelligence, and the bright future she was expected to have. Her parents, proud and powerful, had married not out of love but out of duty, uniting two of the most influential royal houses of Europe. To the outside world, they were a picture of perfection, wealth, elegance, and lineage that traced back through centuries of rulers, but behind the gilded walls of the palace there were cracks. Secrets lingered in quiet corners, and a darkness, hidden and insidious, had already begun to mark Isabella's fate. She was a princess in every sense of the word, but unlike the fairy tales told to children in storybooks, her life was not destined to be filled with joy. A silent illness, carried within her since birth, would slowly shape her world, turning luxuries into burdens and love into a source of heartbreak. From the very beginning, Isabella's story was one of contradictions, beauty and pain, privilege and suffering, adoration and betrayal, and it was a story that would leave the entire world watching in awe and sorrow. Isabella was born on a chilly spring morning in 1872, in the heart of a vast palace that gleamed in sunlight and echoed with the sounds of servants, guards, and the distant laughter of court visitors. Her father was a prince of great influence, a man whose power and ambitions shaped nations, and her mother was a woman of rare elegance and refinement, admired for her poise and connections. Isabella had siblings, older brothers who were groomed for leadership and responsibility, and a younger sister who would grow up under the same strict rules of royal life. Yet, even surrounded by family, Isabella was not shielded from tragedy. Her eldest brother fell gravely ill during her early childhood and passed away, leaving a shadow of grief that darkened every corner of the palace. Her mother, already distant due to the pressures of royal duties, retreated further into her own world, leaving Isabella to navigate the palace on her own. She learned early that wealth and status were not shields against grief, that the glittering walls around her could not protect her from loss, and that life, even for a princess, could be cruel in ways no one could predict. Despite the sorrow and quiet loneliness, Isabella's childhood was also filled with lessons that would shape her for the world she was about to inherit. Her days were a mixture of rigorous study and courtly observation. Tutors taught her languages, mathematics, literature, and history, all with exacting standards, while court advisors drilled her in etiquette, diplomacy, and the subtle arts of influence. Every gesture, every word was noted and judged. Even as a child, Isabella learned to navigate the complex web of court politics, to smile in public while hiding her emotions, and to carry herself with a grace that belied the turmoil she felt inside. And yet, beneath her composed exterior, the hidden illness that had been a quiet companion since birth began to manifest more strongly. It was subtle at first, lingering fatigue, moments of pain that she kept secret, but it would grow, shaping her body, her mood, and her destiny. As Isabella approached her teenage years, the pressures of her royal life became more pronounced. Marriage, as was customary for princesses of her rank, loomed on the horizon. She was introduced to a young prince from a neighboring empire, a man whose charm was matched only by the political ambitions of his family. Their meeting was formal, carefully orchestrated by royal advisors, and while it seemed polite and even cordial, there was no love between them. The match was entirely a matter of politics, meant to strengthen alliances and secure dynastic power. Isabella, though young, understood the weight of her duty and accepted it with a quiet dignity. Yet, the disease that had shadowed her life continued to weaken her, sapping her energy and making even the simplest days a struggle. The palace that once seemed magnificent now felt like a gilded cage, and she began to understand that the life of royalty, for all its opulence, carried burdens few could imagine. Shortly after her marriage, Isabella's world began to unravel. Her husband, while handsome and charming in public, was volatile and distant in private. He had a temper that could flare without warning and a restless nature that led him into reckless behaviors. Whispers of his infidelities soon reached her ears, and the disease that had plagued Isabella for years began to take a visible toll. Fatigue, weakness, and constant pain became part of her daily life, while the social pressures of court and the expectations of motherhood loomed over her like dark clouds. She bore a daughter, a child who became the center of her fragile world, yet even this joy was tinged with sorrow. The strain of her illness, combined with the betrayal and cruelty she experienced in her marriage, meant that Isabella could never have more children, a devastating reality for a princess whose duty was to secure a lineage. Her husband's infidelities continued, and with each betrayal, the sense of isolation grew, leaving Isabella to bear both her physical suffering and the emotional scars of humiliation and loss. The years that followed brought further tragedy. Isabella's illness worsened, leaving her bedridden at times, while the political and social intrigues of the court became more dangerous. Friends and allies kept their distance, either intimidated by her royal status or repelled by the scandals surrounding her household. And then, one of the most shocking events of her life occurred. Her husband and his lover were found dead under mysterious circumstances, throwing the palace into chaos and leaving Isabella to confront a reality she had never anticipated. The court was filled with rumors, accusations, and whispered conspiracies, and while some celebrated her release from a cruel marriage, Isabella herself was left grieving, haunted by betrayal, loss, and the violence that had shattered her world. Alone and weakened by her illness, she faced a life she had never imagined, where every choice was constrained by history, duty, and the invisible shadow that marked her as infected. Isabella tried to rebuild her life, seeking solace and distraction in travel across Europe and the Mediterranean. She visited distant lands, hoping that the change of scenery might ease her pain or offer new opportunities for love and companionship. Yet fate remained unkind. Family relations were strained. Her father, obsessed with status and protocol, refused to allow her the freedom to remarry or live as she wished. Even her daughter, once her source of hope and affection, became distant, their relationship strained by politics, personality, and the pressures of royal life. Isabella threw herself into charitable work, attempting to find purpose in a world that had repeatedly denied her peace. She became a quiet observer of history, watching wars erupt, empires crumble, and nations change, all while reflecting on the fragility of life and the relentless cruelty of her own circumstances. Despite her suffering, Isabella's spirit endured. She found small moments of joy and love in simple acts of kindness, in the beauty of landscapes far from the palace, and in the rare friendships she could trust. She wrote letters, kept diaries, and documented her memories, leaving behind fragments of a life marked by pain, endurance, and resilience. Even when her illness made her weak and frail, she carried herself with dignity, never allowing the tragedies of her life to define her completely. Her memoirs, published late in her life, offered only glimpses of the torment she had endured, as if she wished to shield the world from the full extent of her suffering. She wanted history to remember her not just for the illness or betrayal she had faced, but for her courage, her endurance, and her unwavering will to survive against impossible odds. As she grew older, the world around Isabella changed dramatically. Empires fell, wars ravaged the lands she once traveled, and new generations took her place in the annals of history. She witnessed the rise of new powers, the collapse of old regimes, and the enduring struggles of the people she had once observed from her palace windows. Yet through all this, she remained a symbol of resilience. A princess whose life had been marked by tragedy but also by moments of extraordinary strength. Her relationships, though fraught with difficulty, taught her the complexities of love, loyalty, and human weakness. Even in her final years, Isabella continued to inspire those who heard her story, showing that dignity, courage, and compassion could endure even when life seemed determined to crush them. Her tale of love lost, betrayals endured, and a secret illness that shaped her entire existence continues to captivate and haunt those who hear it. Princess Isabella's life was a testament to the cruel twists of fate, the endurance of the human spirit, and the hidden struggles that even the most privileged must face. She lived through decades of history that shaped nations, yet her personal story remained one of quiet heroism and tragedy. Even though she was born to luxury and power, her journey reminds us that the heart, no matter how royal, remains vulnerable, and that courage is often found not in grand victories, but in the quiet persistence to survive. Isabella's legacy is one of resilience, dignity, and the unyielding strength of a princess who, though infected and surrounded by tragedy, never lost her will to live, never lost her spirit, and left behind a story that will be remembered for generations as both heartbreaking and inspiring.